Hi, I'm Adam Armstrong from thenewalpha.com, and in this video I'm going to talk to you about the question of, are men and women the same? Because there's a lot of talk going on about at the moment about there being no biological difference between men and women, and people just being able to choose their gender willy-nilly on a daily basis and things like that. And I don't really agree with any of that, and I'm going to explain why in this video by telling you that men and women, or showing you how men and women are not really the same at all, but also not forgetting the fact that men and women are equal. It's not like men are better than women or women are better than men. But I think if we as a society neglect or choose to overlook the differences between men and women, things are going to go wrong. So let's start off by talking about the obvious. How can we say that men and women are the same when men and women have completely different bodies? As a guy you have a cock, as a woman you have a pussy. I mean, that's like the most simple, basic thing ever. And kids who are this big start to understand that from the age of however old you are at this big. Little kids get that, but apparently some adults are sort of missing that. So are men and women the same? No, of course they're not. They're completely physically different in many ways. And let's talk about the sexual ways, because to me that one's the most obvious. And if you miss this one, then to me it shows you that if you miss it as a man, you have never had great sex. And if you miss it as a woman, you've never had great sex. So I'm going to show you right now, or explain to you right now, the difference between men and women from a sexual point of view. So the most obvious difference is that women are sexually submissive and men should be sexually dominant. And I say should be because many men these days have had the masculinity battered out of them. They've been told that masculinity is toxic, so they're afraid to be dominant in any way. And I actually heard some male feminist the other day talking about how he now refuses to instigate anything with women, whether it's a conversation, asking for a phone number, or anything sexual, because he sees that as in some way him being a toxic man, which is insane, because women do want men to initiate and take the lead, or at least good women. So actually, before we talk about how men and women are very different sexually, let me define what a good woman is, because the stuff I'm about to explain only applies to good women. It does not apply to radical feminists, and it does not apply to women who are not emotionally healthy. So roughly speaking, let's just say that a good woman is a woman that is slim, attractive. Why do I say slim? Because it shows to me that she takes care of herself. If you're 500 pounds, then you've got some issues, right? But more importantly, she's confident, she's reasonably intelligent, she has reasonable self-esteem. That kind of woman, particularly the intelligence, confidence, self-esteem bit, if she's got those things, she will almost certainly agree with pretty much everything that I'm about to say, as you'll see when you start to notice women leave comments below this video. So let me get into it. So you got women, them sexually submissive, most good women sexually submissive. You got men are meant to be sexually dominant. And what does it mean to be sexually dominant? Well, it means that you're the one who takes control. You're the one who instigates sex. You're the one who takes the lead. And I always say to guys, if you wait for a woman to instigate sex, you'll be waiting a long time. And what do I mean by that? Well, I simply mean that if you're a man and you're in a relationship, or you're on date 3 and the sex is supposed to happen tonight, and you wait for that sex to happen, you wait for your woman or this new woman you've met to instigate the sex, more often than not, you will be very disappointed because she will not instigate the sex. And it doesn't necessarily mean that she doesn't want to have sex with you. That's the bit you need to get. And this is the bit I didn't understand when I was a young man, when I was all confused. Well, not that I'm not young now, but when I was 18, 19, as opposed to 33. I didn't understand that just because the woman isn't undoing my belt and ripping down my pants and dropping to her knees without me saying a word, that doesn't mean she didn't want to have sex. It meant she was waiting for me to step up, be a man, and instigate the bedroom fun, the sex. So you might be wondering, well, why don't women instigate sex? Why aren't they sexually aggressive? Why don't they lead men? And there's a few reasons for that, but one obvious one is she has an inbuilt anti-slut mechanism. So the day after you have sex with a woman, particularly if it's if you've just met and it's the first time you have sex or the second time you have sex, she's going to go the next day or sometime later in the week and tell all her girlfriends about the experience, right? That's going to happen. Women talk about sex more than men do. Men tend to just talk about big tits and a woman who's fit. That's about how deep men go. Women talk about everything, including how big or how small your dick is. You better believe that if you're a guy watching this. So she's going to go talk to all her girlfriends about how good or bad the sex was. And she does not want to have to say that she, carried the guy over her shoulder, threw him down on the bed, ripped his trousers off and ravaged her. Because then all her girlfriends are going to go, she's a fucking slut. That's not what she wants to happen. She wants to be able to say, wow, this guy was so strong, he was so manly, he took control of me, I didn't even know what was happening, he threw me over his shoulder, he put me down on the bed, he ravaged me, it was amazing. In other words, she wants to put the blame, and it's not like a bad blame, she just wants to put that sexual blame on him. She wants her girlfriends to know that he was the one who made it happen, and she just got caught up in it all. And after all, what could she do? Because she's like 5'5" and 120 pounds, and he was 6'2" and built like a rugby player or an American football player, and she couldn't say no. And it was wonderful, and she's going to do it again. So that's one part of the equation. Women definitely submissive, men definitely dominant sexually. But where the lines have been blurred, or where they're becoming more and more blurred in today's society, is that while most good women, and I don't really know what percentage of women are good women as I described earlier, attractive, take care of themselves, confident, intelligent, high self-esteem. But let's say it's like 80% of women fall into that category. The other 20% are like your radical feminists and women who, are emotionally messed up for one reason or another. It could be something really bad that was not their fault at all, like they were abused when they were young, or it could be that they've chosen to date a string of bad men who've, made them feel bad about men. Whatever, those women need to work on that and sort that out before they engage with men. Just like men who are fucked up emotionally shouldn't be in a relationship. They should sort themselves out. I'm not just picking on women here. Both sexes shouldn't enter into sexual interactions with members of the opposite sex until they have their own shit sorted out. But the point is, for those 80% of women who are, reasonably emotionally healthy and have good confidence, good self-esteem, they are sexually submissive. They want the man to take control and lead them in the bedroom. And the other point to consider here, which makes it so obvious that men are the ones who are meant to be dominant, they're meant to be the sexual aggressor, is like the world today is changing. Like every 5 years it changes massively. Today's kids growing up, like my kids growing up today, they know what an iPhone is, they know what a tablet is at the age of 2. I didn't have those things weren't around when I was a young man. And God knows what my parents did. If my kids look back on when my parents were the same age, they'd probably think they were living in prehistoric times. So the world is changing fast, but our genes, our genetics as human beings don't change that fast. They evolve gradually over, thousands of years. My point being, if you go back a few thousand years, maybe a few tens of thousands of years, to the times when we were like, cavemen, what would the man have done? Well, his job was like to go out and hunt for the food. His job was to protect the cave, protect his cave girl and the cave offspring from the saber-toothed tiger and whatever else was out there. His job was to, catch the food, bring it back on his shoulder, throw it down in the house, and then the woman's job was to look after the cave, prepare the food, look after the kids. Obviously, I'm simplifying, but that's pretty much how it was. So let me ask you this: if those were the roles, if the guy had all these manly, aggressive roles that relied on his masculine strength and power, and the woman had all these feminine roles that relied on her instincts to want to look after people and nurture, would it then make sense that in the bedroom those roles were reversed and the woman suddenly wants to dominate the man? Of course not. Now hear me out. I am not saying that women, good women at times, cannot be sexually dominant. They can. I could give you examples of this from my own sex life. I remember once a girlfriend of mine pushing me down on a sofa, telling me to sit still, and then she did a striptease for me. And I was more than happy to sit there and watch her. That was fine. She was momentarily in the more dominant role. I was just sat there. She was leading me. She was stripping, and it was incredibly sexy. However, there was a point where I could tell that she'd got everything out of stripping for me that she wanted to get out of it. And I could tell, she didn't say it, but I could tell just from reading her face and her body language that it was time for me to step up and reclaim my dominant role. So I'm not saying that women can't ever be sexually aggressive. Of course they can. But most of the time, the man needs to be sexually dominant. And when the man is sexually dominant, that's when the woman can give in and fully surrender to the man. And that's when she can experience maximum pleasure. I think one of the reasons these days why there's so many, in fact, I know one of the reasons these days why there's so many women who cannot orgasm, or, the guy has to go down on them for 30 minutes just for them to experience one freaking orgasm, is because men are refusing, or they simply don't know that they should be taking control and leading their women. So the woman feels like she's not in bed with a real man. She's got nothing to give in and surrender to. And when you're sexually submissive like women are, sex is all about giving in and surrendering to the man. And when you're a man and you're sexually dominant, sex is meant to be all about power and leading and control. And you might think that sounds terrible, but that's the way it is. I promise you, when I was figuring all this stuff out about women and sex, when I was like 18, 19 years old, I had sex just like most other people have sex. I'd give the woman a clitoral orgasm, usually via oral sex. And that was my cue that I could then engage in intercourse with her, and I'd blow my load. And that was sex. And you think you're doing well as a man when you give a woman that kind of sex. Like, oh, I made her come, that's great. And I mean, you're doing better than a lot of men who just fail to make their women come full stop. But the reality is that the female potential for orgasm is virtually limitless. So as a man, today, the idea of me going to the bedroom and only giving my woman one orgasm, it's like, well, what the hell is that all about? I'm going to give her multiple orgasms every time, and what's more, I'm not going to rely on licking a clit to do it. I can give her orgasms in any way that I desire, many of which don't even involve touching her pussy or ass or clit. One example is the mindgasm. You can get to a point where you can give a woman an orgasm using nothing but your voice, using nothing but dirty talk. And if that doesn't show that women are submissive and want nothing more than to give in and surrender to a dominant man, then I don't know what does. And if you're listening to this and you're saying that I'm wrong, or you're thinking I'm wrong, then you just don't really want to be open to changing your beliefs a little bit. So that, to me, that is the single biggest difference between men and women as far as I'm concerned. The fact that women are sexually submissive and men are sexually dominant. But the second big difference that I've observed and noticed in the world, and so have loads of other people who are at least a little bit intelligent and have their eyes open, is that men have different career and work ambitions to women. Now, I wouldn't say the difference here is as big as sexually, because I'm telling you for a fact that sexually, I don't know of any good women who are sexually dominant. Good, as I described earlier, that definition I gave you earlier of what a good woman is. I don't know of any. All women want to be sexually submissive, and the ones with the most high-power jobs or the most stress and responsibility during the day are the ones who actually want to be the most submissive in the evening when things get sexual, because they just want to give in and forget about all that responsibility and stress. So that's the biggest difference. But the difference, in terms of the workplace with men and women, is massive. And you've got a lot of people today, not just radical feminists, but radical feminists are the obvious ones, who are constantly talking about this gender pay gap and this idea that there's this corporation that's worth hundreds of millions or billions, and there's 100 men with top positions here and only 10 women. And they're always telling us that's a bad thing. But what they fail to point out is that for many women, simply having children and bringing those children up to the best of their ability is as important as having a great career or building a great business is for a man. Now, is that to say that some women don't want a great career or don't want to build a great business? No, some do. But for women, a lot of them simply want to bring up a family and do it well. So that removes a huge number of women from the workplace straight away. So how can you ever have a situation where there's as many women in top roles as men across the board, across all jobs and careers? It makes no sense to me. And the other thing is, some women who kind of go against their genes, they go against wanting a family and bringing up a family, end up in a very conflicted place. Because if in their early 20s they spend all their time chasing their career, and the best they have with men is a series of one-night stands or flings or relationships that last a few months and don't go anywhere, here's what happens to those women. Let's say they're earning a lot of money by the time they're 30, 32 years of age. My age, let's say. I'm 33, but near as damn it. All of a sudden, almost without exception, they suddenly shit the bed and they go, oh my God, the biological clock's ticking. I'm 30 years old. I don't have a man. How am I going to have children? So there's this massive conflict for women. Men don't really have that conflict. I've got a friend who's 40 now, and he kind of occasionally says to me, he's like, oh, Adam, I wonder if I should have a kid. He's just wondering about it. He doesn't really give a shit. He's wondering whether he should have a kid, but he also knows that he could have a kid in 10 years' time as long as he stays fit and healthy. No problem. He could get a woman pregnant when he's 50, when he's 55, maybe even when he's 65, no problem. But women have this biological clock that's ticking. And that creates a huge difference between men and women, meaning men and women are not the same as far as career, work, business, financial ambition goes. Because there's just a whole load of women who just aren't interested in that. They're happy to settle down with a man who can take care of that. And that does not mean that those women are gold diggers. Because some people will say, oh, the only women who would live off a man are gold diggers. Well, no. My fiancée doesn't have a job, but I don't want her to have a job. Because if she has a job and I have my business, who's going to bring up the kids? Then we're kind of failing as a couple, because now we're going to pay someone like a nanny or an au pair, whatever you want to call it, to bring the kids up. That's pointless in my opinion. What's the point of that? Why have kids if you don't want to spend time with them? So that's a huge difference between men and women. The ambition thing, the career thing, and it's a reason, it's an explanation for the gender pay gap, which people bring up all the time. Because people will say, well, you know, there's a big thing in England at the moment about the BBC, which produces some of our best television. But it's constantly in the paper and on TV about how terrible it is that there's this gender pay gap at the top of the BBC. And I'm not fully informed about this, so if I make a cock-up with my facts here, then please forgive me. But as far as I can tell, there's people bitching and moaning because, like, the top earner in the BBC, like the top presenter, is maybe earning something like £2.5 million a year. So he's on very good money for a guy who's not running his own business. He's got a job. He's on very good money, £2.5 million a year. And then the best woman might be earning something like £1.75 million a year. And they're like, oh my God, look, he's earning £750,000 more than that guy. And it's like, who cares? They're just two people at the very top of an organisation. And the fact that there's more guys who earn the top money in the BBC, again, it's because of what I said. Well, that's one of the big reasons. The fact that a lot of women don't want to work, and that's fine. They've got an inbuilt desire to bring up a family. But another thing is that kind of blows this like gender pay gap thing out of the water is that if you go down the pay scale, so forget about the outliers, forget about the people who earn hundreds of thousands or millions a year, and just look at everyday normal jobs. As far as I'm aware in England, and I'm sure it's the same in America, if you go to get a regular job, you're going to get paid the same hourly rate regardless of what sex you are. Now, I'm sure there's some places where that's not true, some companies who are, you know, for some reason backwards, but in most places that is true. So this whole gender pay gap thing's nonsense, and it's actually affected, I think, first and foremost by the fact that women and men are very different when it comes to financial and, financial like ambition, you know. There's just more men who are willing to work long hours, more men who are willing to set up their own businesses, more men who are willing to do dangerous but high-paid jobs. So I think that's about all I've got to say about that. Are men and women the same? Fuck no. Are they equal? Should we respect all men and women the same? Well, yeah, they're equal. But, you know, that thing of respect, that's a funny word, because to me, you have to earn respect. I don't necessarily have endless respect for somebody who I've just met who I know nothing about, because for all I know, they could be a criminal. They could be a murderer. How do I know? So I think respect is something that has to be earned. But are men and women equal? Yeah. And should they be allowed, like, kind of equal opportunities? Yeah. But are they very different? Yeah. Sexually, women submissive, men dominant, or at least men, you need to be dominant. There's very few dominant men left. But the thing is, when you become a sexually dominant man, you can have any woman you want because women are crying out for it. And from a financial point of view, men and women are very different. Sure, there's some women succeeding in high-paid jobs and stuff, but I don't think there's as many women who have the appetite for that kind of thing. And I think there's plenty of women who are actually pretty fulfilled doing a great job of running the household and bringing up the kids. I don't know of any men who are fulfilled doing nothing but that. I mean, I love my kids more than any other people in this world. And it's a kind of love, an unconditional love that I didn't know existed until my kids arrived. And other people had told me about that. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And then as soon as my daughter was born, I knew it was real. However, the truth is, would I like to spend as much time with them during the day and not work on my business as my fiancée does? No, I wouldn't. But would she like to do my role? No. So are men and women the same? Absolutely not. If you like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, leave a comment, and of course you can learn more at the website, thenewalpha.com. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please subscribe to the channel by hitting the subscribe button below. Then hit the bell icon next to the subscribe button, because that'll give you notification when I release a new video. Also, hit the like button and then in the comments section, leave a question, give me a feedback, or even tell me if you think I missed anything in this video, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And if you love this video, I'm sure you'll also really enjoy my special report, The Testosterone Apocalypse. In that report, you'll discover why the Western world is suffering from an epidemic of low testosterone. You'll discover how that epidemic of low testosterone is affecting you, and you'll also find out how that epidemic of low testosterone could literally end Western civilization as we know it. To get your hands on that report, The Testosterone Apocalypse, visit thenewalpha.com/test. That's thenewalpha.com/test.